They cut me out of the will while I was in the hospital, so I cashed out. First, I was still hooked up to a morphine drip when my sister texted me a photo of a document with my father's signature on it, dated the day before, the day I went into surgery. I want you to sit with that timeline for a second, because it matters. Not after. Not once I was stable. The day before. While I was being prepped for emergency surgery, my family was in a lawyer's office rewriting who I was to them on paper. My name is Renata Ellis, 34 years old, and 3 months ago I was rushed into emergency surgery for a ruptured appendix that had gone septic. I remember very little of that first night. The fluorescent lights, a nurse asking me to count backward from 10, my mother's voice somewhere far away saying, "Everything will be fine, baby." What I didn't know, what I wouldn't learn until I was conscious enough to check my phone 4 days later, was that while I was on that operating table fighting an infection that had already spread to my bloodstream, my father was sitting in an estate attorney's office removing my name from his will. I need you to understand who I was in that family first. I was the one who showed up, not occasionally, structurally. When my father's hardware store nearly went under 8 years ago, I was the one who co-signed the business loan that saved it, using my own credit, my own name, my own risk. When my mother needed knee surgery 2 years ago, and their insurance left a gap of $11,000, I was the one who covered it, quietly, no fanfare, because that's what you do for people you love. I had a younger brother, Isaiah, 28, who had never once in his adult life held a job longer than 8 months, and a younger sister, Tamsin, 26, who still called our parents for grocery money without a hint of shame. I didn't resent them for it, not really, not until I understood what was actually happening underneath all of it. The photo my sister sent me wasn't cruelty on her part. She didn't fully understand what she was showing me. She'd found the document in our father's desk while looking for his insurance card during the chaos of my hospitalization, and she sent it to me the way you'd send a confusing form to someone you trust to explain it. "What is this?" she texted. "Why does it say Isaiah gets the store now?" I stared at that message through a haze of pain medication and disbelief, and something in me went very, very still. I asked her to send the full document, every page photographed clearly. She did, not realizing she was handing me evidence of my own erasure. The will had been updated 11 months earlier, quietly, without my knowledge, removing me as co-beneficiary of the hardware store I had personally kept alive with my own credit, and removing me entirely from the house I had helped my parents refinance 3 years prior when they were on the verge of foreclosure. In their place, everything, the store, the house, the modest but real savings account, went to Isaiah, with Tamsin listed as a smaller secondary beneficiary. My name appeared nowhere. Not as a footnote, not as an afterthought, simply gone, as though 8 years of quietly holding that family together had never happened. I want to be honest about what I felt in that hospital bed, because it wasn't rage, not at first. It was a very cold, very clear kind of clarity, the kind pain and morphine sometimes strip everything else away to reveal. I thought about every dollar, every co-signature, every quiet transfer I had made to keep that family financially upright, and I thought about how none of it had ever been protected, because I had never once asked for it to be. I had given freely, assuming freely given things eventually earn their own kind of security. I was wrong, and lying in that bed, I finally let myself know it. My best friend Ola, a paralegal who had spent a decade watching exactly this kind of quiet family maneuvering happen to other women, came to see me on day 5. I showed her the photos. She read through them twice, silent, and then said the thing that changed the direction of everything that followed. "Renata," she said, "you don't fight a will. You protect yourself before it ever gets the chance to matter." "What do you mean?" I asked. She said, You're still a co-signer on that business loan. That loan is still legally yours as much as his. If they're cutting you out of the future, you make sure you're not left holding the past. I gave myself 2 weeks in that hospital bed to think clearly before I acted, because I had learned, the hard way, that emotion makes bad legal decisions and clarity makes good ones. I called the bank that held the business loan and confirmed in writing that my name was still fully attached to it, meaning I was still fully liable for it, despite being fully removed from any future ownership of what it had built. I called an estate and business attorney named Marcus Whitfield, no relation to my family, who told me plainly, "You can't force your way back into a will, but you can absolutely stop being financially exposed to people who've already decided you don't matter to their future." I did not confront my entire family. I quietly did the opposite. I smiled through my mother's visits. I let my father hold my hand and tell me how proud he was that I was healing so fast. And quietly, methodically, over the following 6 weeks, I began separating my financial life from theirs, the same way you'd carefully remove a single thread from a garment without unraveling the whole thing at once. I had my attorney draft formal notice to the bank that I intended to exit the loan as co-signer, which under the loan's original terms required either full refinancing in my father's name alone or immediate repayment of my portion. I redirected the modest monthly transfer I'd been quietly sending toward the store's overhead for years, the one nobody in my family had ever thanked me for because none of them actually knew it existed, and I cashed out entirely and legally an investment account I had opened years earlier under both our names as a safety net for the business, one my father had forgotten I still had access to. One that had never been mentioned anywhere in his newly updated will because he didn't remember it existed either. The store's refinancing fell through 4 months later. Isaiah, now supposedly the sole future owner of a business he had never once worked a full shift in, didn't have the credit history or the income to qualify for the loan on his own. My father called me, his voice smaller than I had ever heard it, asking if I could just co-sign one more time, just to get through this rough patch. I told him, gently, that I hoped it worked out for them, and that I wished them well. I did not raise my voice. I did not mention the will. I simply, finally, stopped being the safety net for a future I had already been quietly written out of. My mother tried tears next, the same practiced tears I'd watched dissolve every boundary I ever tried to set as a child. Tamsin tried guilt, reminding me how much I owed this family for raising me. I let both of those attempts land softly and slide right off, because I had already done the math, and the math no longer required my forgiveness to be correct. There was a moment, near the end of that 6-week stretch, when my father sat across from me at my own kitchen table and asked why I hadn't just talked to him directly instead of letting things unfold this way. I told him I had spent 8 years talking to him directly about the loan, about the store, about every quiet transfer that kept this family upright, and none of it had ever made it into a document that protected me. Some conversations only matter to the people having them, I said. Paperwork is the only language that matters to everyone else. He didn't have a response. He simply nodded, the way people nod when they already know they've lost an argument they never should have started, and we sat there in a silence that felt, for the first time in years, entirely honest. It has been 3 months since that hospital room, since the photo, since the quiet unraveling of a financial safety net nobody had ever bothered to protect on my behalf. I am healed now, physically, in a way that feels almost symbolic. My name is fully off that loan. My investment account sits untouched, entirely mine, in a bank my family has never once asked about, because they've never once asked what actually belongs to me. If you are watching this, and you have ever quietly built the floor other people stand on without a single brick of it ever being yours, I want you to hear this clearly. You do not have to fight your way back into someone else's plans for the future. You are allowed to simply calmly, stop financing a life you were never actually included in.